Welcome to the Politics Chicks podcast. I'm Christy Branham.
And I'm Monica Healy.
Monica, we have a very special show planned for today. We're so excited to welcome two very remarkable people to the show, Sher U-F and Kelly Becker. Sher had to wear leg braces when she was 5 years old. She remembers being treated like a typical kid one day and the next day being called the crippled girl and worse. Since Sher was the only child considered disabled at her school, Sher's kindergarten teacher took the class on a field trip to an institution to see other children with disabilities. The visit haunted Sher. She worried that children with severe disabilities didn't get to live at home and go to a regular school like she did. Sher says she eventually got out of the braces, but the braces never got out of her. And that is why she chooses to teach children with significant disabilities. One of Sher's goals as an educator is for non-disabled students to learn about disabilities and know that they have nothing to be afraid of. Sher is instrumental in creating a thriving, intentional culture of inclusion at her elementary school.
We also have Kelly Becker on the show. Kelly is the mother of Dempsey, a 10-year-old child with multiple complex disabilities, including cerebral palsy, achondroplasia, epilepsy, and cortical vision impairment. But more than anything, Kelly is a fierce advocate, an open book, and a truth teller about what it means to love and raise a child like Dempsey in a world that too often overlooks or underestimates him. She is passionate about the power Dempsey has to teach kindness and perspective simply by being who he is. Please join us in welcoming Sher and Kelly to the show. Hi, guys. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, fabulous. Glad to be here.
Me as well.
Oh, I am so excited to interview you guys. Monica and I have been looking forward to this for over a week. So we're so excited that you said yes and you agreed to come here and share a little bit about yourselves and about Dempsey. But if you're okay with it, before we dive into the conversation, we want to take the time to share with our audience something truly extraordinary. It's a glimpse into Dempsey and Sher's school and the intentional inclusion that makes your community unlike any other. From what Sher has shared with me at Glen Lake Elementary, it's not just about accommodation, it's about belonging. And we want our viewers to be able to see this short video because it captures what's possible when schools stop treating disability like a side note and start embracing it as a central part of the human experience. So let's go give that video a peek and then we'll come back and talk more about it, okay?
True inclusion is believing you belong together, and that's what's happening at Glen Lake. Glen Lake is extremely fortunate to be home to the Elementary Compass program. My students are kind of a big deal. The Compass program is a district program, and it's for students with multiple disability and complex medical needs. Rest assured, no one at Glen Lake is defined by their limitations because we have a very intentional culture of inclusion. My students in Compass are going to Spanish. My students are non-speakers. How can this be beneficial? Well, the students that are learning Spanish use the opportunity to explain to the students in Compass what they've learned. It becomes a learning opportunity and social interaction, and children are learning to look past the disability and look at the student and look at the friend.
I helped them with pushing them, and always in the morning, I'm giving a big hug and saying bye before I leave. Or sometimes while we wait for the others, me and Keegan just dance around while we wait for them. Everyone deserves to play, and you should always help people no matter who they are or what disabilities they have.
The students in Compass provide a vital service to the school. Our students are teachers. They are teaching other children how to be good people. Glen Lake has witnessed how one little pebble in inclusion creates ripples of love and understanding and respect. We're not stopping now.
And we're back. Monica, do you want to start it off?
First, Sher, thank you for what you're doing. And Kelly, thank you for trusting us with your story. Let's dive in.
Cool. Cher, one thing that just really struck me was in the beginning of that video. And you said my students are kind of a big deal. What makes them so rare and necessary and strikingly special?
Oh, I love my job. I love my job, and the kids are definitely the reason why. The students in my Compass class are always authentically themselves. They're genuine, they're people, and they are absolutely the best friends ever. They don't care if your hair is clean, if you're wearing designer clothes, or if you're popular. They just enjoy being with you, with people. They live in the moment, and most of the time they're very happy, as much as reasonably can be expected, of course. At the same time, they are clobbered with disabilities. And I know that, most of us shut down when we have a headache or, a hangnail, and they just keep persevering no matter what. They are simply amazing. Compass students, it's a very small, unique population. They have intellectual disabilities and generally they have physical disabilities. They use wheelchairs, they're G tube fed, they're non speakers. They can have vision or hearing impairments or both. And just to give you some idea, in the Hopkins School District, we have roughly 7,200 students. Out of those 7,200 students, there's about 10 that are considered Compass, and 7 of those 10 were my students last year. About 50% of those students are in my class because of traumatic brain injury, something that happened either at birth or after birth. Um, they work on functional skills. It's a common misconception that a child who uses a wheelchair is Compass. If that child is able to work on what we traditionally think of as academics, if they're learning shapes, colors, letters, numbers, that's not Compass. Compass students work on functional skills like communicating what they want and social interactions. And just so you know, in the Hopkins School District, if a child is elementary school age and they need Compass, then they're bused to me at Glen Lake. So even if we have 6 elementary schools. So if they live out by Meadowbrook Elementary, but they're a child who needs Compass services, they come to me at Glen Lake because we get all the kids together. It's actually a great thing because there's power in numbers. And if you know one child in Compass, you know one child in Compass. But they do have some similar needs and some similar skill sets, and we can pool our resources, and actually then we can be a force to be reckoned with. And of course, I am super fortunate to have Dempsey as one of my students. We have been together for 5 years. I teach children kindergarten through 5th grade. And so I have the same students year after year after year. And next year will be our 6th year together.
And
Yay!
Kelly, maybe you can tell us some more about Dempsey, not just, his diagnosis, but who is Dempsey?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first, with his diagnosis, just to get that out of the way, he did lose oxygen at birth. So he has global delays. I mean, it was every part of his brain was affected with the loss of oxygen. So he is in a wheelchair. He's G tube fed. He's nonverbal, but we say very vocal because he loves to chat with anyone who's willing to get by him and chat. So, just huge personality. He loves swimming, being outside, swinging. He's made some pretty good friends at Glen Lake where we've had play dates. I've just got another text this morning to set up another play date with a typical functioning child. And it's just very heartwarming. I will cry in this podcast. It's pretty much guaranteed. But things that we never thought would be a part of his life are a part of his life because of the Glen Lake community.
That is so awesome. I was texting Cher yesterday and she said that that you probably wouldn't be able to get back to me because he had two kids over and he was swimming all day yesterday. So that's
Yes.
just amazing. And just so you know, as you were talking, we did put some pictures of Dempsey up on the screen, and one of them is him having a blast swimming in the pool. It's so cool just to see the joy in his face. But I know as a parent, I have all three of my kids have had an IEP in school. None of them have disabilities quite as complex as Dempsey's, but I know as a parent, there are so many things that go into your feelings and your ability to advocate for them. And we all have a certain set of hopes and fears for our kids. So, what were your hopes and fears when you learned about what challenges Dempsey might face?
Yeah, first we found out that he has dwarfism when I was still pregnant. So that was just like kind of a whirlwind to wrap your head around that. But at that time, I was into all the shows about little people. So I was like, this is going to be hard because it's a physical difference that people will be able to see. So you might get made fun of or anything along that aspect, but he'll be capable of doing anything and everything friends could do. And then once we found out he lost oxygen after he was born, it was, I mean, it's still like years of processing it all. But like in the beginning, as they told us, it was like you completely black out. You don't know what it means or what it's going to look like. And we still mourn things like, sorry, I'm getting a little shaky. Anytime we go to weddings, I don't enjoy going to weddings because you get the father, bride talking like, oh, we've always dreamed of this day. And it's like, that's never going to be my dream. And I can't have that dream for him. So there's things like that that we still will never get. But we've gained a lot through the friendships and through the community at school. And just with him being like the happiest kid, it just makes stuff so much easier. Um, and as a parent with typical functioning kids, I have other fears for them that I don't have for Dempsey. I don't have to worry about his education in the sense of a parent who's going to, get a talk about or get a call like your kid's failing a class. Don't have to worry about that. So we're good there. Where I can say that my only hope and dream and goal for him is to remain happy. And that's truly all I want for him. And as long as we can make him happy every day, which swimming does, we spend 3 hours in the pool every gosh darn day.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And as a parent, I just know how much joy it brings you to see the joy in your child.
Absolutely.
Cher, as Dempsey's teacher, how has he changed the way you approach teaching?
Well, Monica, you know when you're in the presence of greatness, what that feels like? Dempsey has a booming personality, as Kelly has alluded to. Everyone at Glen Lake knows Dempsey. Everyone loves Dempsey. He's charming. He attracts people. He's got a great sense of humor. So from early on with Dempsey, I knew that inclusion had to be part of his time at Glen Lake because he is the life of the party. It's my 30th year of teaching, and I have always done inclusion, but it looked a little different. Originally, if a child was a kindergartner, they are also part of a kindergarten class. So they have 2 classes, and we would make sure that they were included in that kindergarten class. But because there's only a handful of students who are encompassed, sometimes you can have maybe the kindergartners in a certain year. There isn't another kindergartner in Compass. So then when they're first graders, there isn't a first grader that needs Compass. And so there were bubbles of kids that were missing out. And as I said, that has changed over time. When Dempsey started with me, it was 2020. I don't know if that year rings a bell to anyone, but it was August 2020, and I heard, you have a new student as we're about ready to go into distance learning. And I'm like, who on God's green earth moves during COVID? The Beckers, that's who. Thank goodness for me. It was phenomenal. But it was so hard. My heart ached just communicating to this child through a screen. And instead of doing distance learning where it was my whole class at the same time, I did individual. Google Meets is the platform we used, but individual virtual meetings with the child and whoever was there to support them. And then when we finally got up and running, and the students were back, Compass, my class, because of all the medical fragile needs, we still weren't doing inclusion just because it was way too scary. There was actually only 6 adults were even allowed in our classroom. The principal wasn't even allowed in the classroom just because we were really trying to control the germs. So it was a very slow start for this child that just has this enormous personality. And once we got rolling, that's when I really got to see Dempsey come to life. In 2022, our school started raising money for an accessible playground. And it became clear to me that all the students in our school deserved to know the students in Compass and would greatly benefit by knowing the students in Compass. And I'd look at a kid like Dempsey and I'd think, wow, like he has so much to give to other people and he has so much to receive from other people. So I started what's called a compassion invasion. And visually, if you see the word compassion, the first letters spell out compass. So we always capitalized compass in compassion invasion. And what that meant was so we wouldn't have these desert grades with no one that needed Compass services. All of the students were having multiple opportunities to interact with kids from Compass throughout the year. And that was just my goal. And that's how we started the Compassion Invasion.
Um, I'd like to ask both of you because, Kelly, you see Dempsey as a parent and, from a parent's perspective as your child, and Cher, you see him as one of your students. But what can Dempsey do that people might not expect? And Cher and I before the show were talking about expectations and how those can hinder people's. But what has he done that's exceeded even your highest expectations for him?
I think it's shedding light on a different life where not that he needs a pity party by any means, but for a kid to see somebody else have a different way of life can be super impactful. And even for adults, I think a lot of adults could use an eye opener on maybe life isn't perfect or what's supposed to be whatever your perfect is. And we all work through things differently. And that's how we teach compassion and understanding. So I think he's teaching that just by living his life.
Amazing. Amazing. How about you, Cher?
We've already established that he's a firecracker with never ending energy, but he's also can be very, very chill. And he's very intuitive. He has this calm presence about him. Children seek him out. And there are times you catch other children just calmly holding his hand. And it's almost like they're taking the vibe off of him, that they just need a moment. So they just go hold Dempsey's hand. We had a child who was on the outside, looked like he was just standing outside of the school building, but he actually was dealing with a lot of anxiety. And it was really hard for him to even enter the school that day. And I just kind of went over to him and I said hi. And, Dempsey was, saying hi. And we said, do you want to go in the school with us? And the Dempsey's smiling at this child, encouraging this child. And I said, maybe you could even push Dempsey's wheelchair. And he's like, could I? And I said, well, why don't you ask Dempsey? And I don't know if you noticed in the video, but Dempsey uses a switch next to his head. It's like a little button. And for Dempsey, we program different messages. And so when he goes to his fourth grade class, he's able to say, good morning, class, and those kinds of things. When it's not there, you still see Dempsey doing this. And we heard you, Dempsey. It's just this act of he's trying to communicate even more. And when this child said, Dempsey, may I push your wheelchair? Dempsey, let him know with the flip of a head, yes. And that child was empowered. This child who was reeling with anxiety, I cannot even tell you what was all going on, grabbed those handlebars so hard and pushed Dempsey in with the biggest, proudest smile on his face because he had one of the most popular kids in the school and he got to be his buddy. And he, instead of bringing Dempsey to Dempsey's class, brought him to his class because he wanted everyone to see, look, I'm with Dempsey. And everyone flocked to Dempsey and therefore flocked to this child and welcomed him in. And the teacher looked at me knowingly and went, there you go. I see time and time again how our students in Compass provide so much to the rest of the school and the individual children and what their needs are. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable the difference they are making. So yes, Dempsey, he's, you were asking, what has he taught others? That.
I gotta say, up to this point in this interview, that thus far, I know that Kelly, don't be afraid to cry because Monica and I are criers, both of
Excellent.
us. So, and we want to hold space for that because I think part of authenticity is actually being able to express your emotions without being self-conscious about it. But you know, thus far has been such a dopamine hit for me because it's just making me feel warm and fuzzy inside hearing you guys talk about it so passionately.
And that is just the smallest example. I could go on and on and on. And there are things that have happened that people come and tell me, and it just blows me away. So what has happened to the individual children that we don't even know about? It's remarkable.
Y'all are making me cry and making me miss teaching.
I told you.
Well, and these children, I mean, we all go through a lot, but it's unbelievable sometimes what children are having to deal with. And to know that you have a friend that your words are safe with, that is always there for you, is always happy to see you and isn't going to judge you, that you couldn't put a price tag on it. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And that's exactly who Dempsey and the rest of the students in Compass are. They're just gift givers.
Monica, I'm excited to talk about this next segment, and it's about inclusion because you yourself were a school teacher for 30 years and were fortunate enough to have profoundly disabled students integrated into your classrooms. So I'll hand it off to you now to ask the next question, but I'd also ask you to share your experience too with these kids and what you've seen them capable of. So why don't you head on to the next question?
I retired from teaching at the end of last year, and like you share, which is clearly impossible because, I know.
What?
I am a music specialist, so I saw all of the kids in the school. We had K through 5, and kind of similar to your building, we had a program called Connect. And it was a self-contained classroom, and like Hopkins, and I was in the Osseo district. Children from all over the district would come to Oakview to be in the Connect program. And honestly, we really needed another classroom full because we had 2 classrooms at Oakview, and we certainly could have populated another one. And depending on the level of ability of those kids, they would come to me with a classroom. And the interaction I saw during that time was just so soul-filling and so so beneficial on both sides for the kids in the Connect classroom and the kids whose classroom they were attending with. They benefited equally, I think. And yeah, can't say enough about those programs. And I think the adults in our world could benefit from some programs like that for sure.
Yeah, and Monica, I remember you telling me that you had nonverbal kids in your class that while they may not have been able to speak and communicate through speech, they could still sing. They could still play musical instruments.
Yeah, we would have kids that, were nonverbal, but would participate in music. And even if their participation was somewhat limited, just the joy you would see in their faces just from being there was worth it all, for sure.
Absolutely. And we have part of the compassion invasion was invading music, again, regardless of age. And we had students that would along as well. And other students would learn how to help the child with the disabilities play the instruments in their hand over hand and what all that took to include them to make sure they were actively involved. And I want to sneak this example in. I don't want to forget it later. But again, so much of this inclusion is beyond what you could plan for a lesson. And so one day when Dempsey, who was third grade at the time, we have combined first, second grade combo classes, third, fourth grade combo classes. So Dempsey was in the third, fourth grade one. But again, Compass goes into every room. And we were in first and second grade music. And Dempsey started to have a seizure. And he gets kind of stiff and distant at first. And he sometimes cries afterwards. And so he started to cry. So I removed him from the classroom. And I came back. He was with staff back in Compass. We got him out of his chair so he could rest. And I came back, and it was brilliant. Dr. Brad Bradshaw is the music teacher, said to me, Miss Sher, what happened with our friend Dempsey? And I said, well, he had a seizure. And he said, a seizure? Is that something we should be afraid of? It was just like you couldn't have scripted this better. And so I said, it may seem scary, especially because he cried. But no, it's not anything to be afraid of. And I explained to the students that, when you're on your device, you're on a laptop or whatever, and you start to get that spinning ball and there's a glitch in the computer, everything's still there. Your computer's still there, but you just have to kind of wait out this little spinning ball and there it's gone. Everything is back. That's kind of what's happening with Dempsey's brain is there's just this little glitch. He freezes up. And sometimes when he comes back, he's a little confused. He doesn't quite know where he is. And so by crying, he's letting us know that was a bit much. I just need to kind of rest, reboot, and start over. I said, he's back in the classroom right now. We got him out of his wheelchair. He is laying out under some twinkly lights that he absolutely loves. And he's fine. And we'll bring him back very soon. We're just going to give him a few minutes to rest, but you'll see he is fine. And you don't know who in that class will encounter seizures either themselves or someone they know and love later on in life. And so when Uncle Steve all of a sudden has a seizure, I'm not saying it wouldn't be scary, but this will give them some foundation and some understanding of what's going on. And again, you cannot plan this in a lesson. It's just, I want to say remarkable again, but it is. It's remarkable that in the moment, you can have those kids, you can empower the kids, and they're like, got it. I understand. I'm not going to worry. And to learn to not be afraid of disabilities,
I love that you use the computer to make the analogy with the COVID class.
the spinning ball from hell.
Well, and that kind of segued into our next question about how do you prepare non-disabled students to engage with their peers who have profound disabilities that may include, problems with communication with each other.
So obviously, my class, if there's a giant assembly going on at Glen Lake, we're there, we're present. But before we do, intentional inclusion, I go into classrooms and I talk to kids at a very age appropriate level. Inclusion is important because skills like showing compassion and being kind, those skills take practice. And inclusion allows you to practice those skills. I mean, I have a t shirt, it just says be kind. But what does that mean? Be respectful. What does that mean? These are really abstract concepts. But that when you're learning to actually interact with other people and learning to appreciate them, you're learning real life skills, not just for the moment, but things that can that'll stay with you for life. Um, I tell the children that someday you'll be old. And actually, I'm going to backtrack. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'm getting ahead of myself. But, when I'm prepping the kids, when we're having the conversation ahead of time, I bring in pictures and I talk about the students from Compass and we talk about whatever the kids want. They can ask me questions. There's power in words. And sometimes, they want to know why aren't their eyes necessarily focusing together and why are they drooling? And so we talk these things through so they're not as scary. And I try to give the medical reasons why their muscles aren't as strong, for the drooling. It takes you effort and energy to keep your mouth closed. And we talk through these things, but I always let them know the personality of the children. And this really excites them when they hear some of the funny things that Dempsey does, or some of the other students in my class, how they tease me. And the kids just light up and they want to know, do they like Spider-Man? And they get very excited and they want to know, can they come right now to our classroom? The older children, I talk to them about that learning to not be afraid of disabilities will serve them their whole life. And I say to them, someday you'll be old. Someday you will be 30 years old and you will be on an elevator. And someone with multiple disabilities will back up into the elevator and the doors will close. And you might be uncomfortable, and that's okay because that's our first go-to. People have to trust their instincts. So that's where it starts. But you will remember Dempsey and you will remember all the other children that were your friends in Compass, and you will know you don't have to be afraid. You will make a choice that there are adults out there right now in this world who do not make that choice. They choose to stay afraid. And that's very empowering to know that you don't have to be afraid and that you can in turn treat that person like a person.
Awesome. Monica, do you want to do the next question?
Yeah. Kelly, let's hear some more from you. What differences do you see in Dempsey at school versus maybe in the wider community?
Well, kind of going off of what Cher was just talking about, we have a name plaque on Dempsey's wheelchair that says, "Hello, my name is Dempsey." And this is me as a parent not being as outgoing as I should be with him. But this will allow kids to come up to him, see his name, and say hi to him first. Otherwise, I have to be the one to speak for him, which I'm getting better and better at. But I don't love chatting with everyone. So that's just me, and I'm working on that. But in the community, if we're in Hopkins, chances are somebody will know him and be like, "Oh, that's Dempsey." And if we venture to many parks in our area and in other cities and whatnot. But everybody, I think, is more curious than anything. We still get looks, and that's where I have to come in to the adult role of being like, "Hey, this is Dempsey. You can say hi to him. Like, I can wave his hand for him, or you can give him a high five." Um, with our community, like Cher said, he is just a rock star and people know him, and I don't have to intervene to get them to interact with him. We have kids that will come up, give him a fist bump, touch his hand. And they all know, like, to say, "Hey, Dempsey, it's me," you know, Willow or whoever is next to him. They approach with their voice and then touch because he does have startle seizures. So they all know that. Um, yeah, he loves being talked to. And just the other day in the car, like Dom, my 7-year-old, got right up next to his face and Dempsey just started giggling. And I should have taken out my phone, but I was just sitting there tearing up because of their interaction. But it's Dom getting up close to him, Dempsey laughing, and then Dom being like, "What's so funny, Demps? What's so funny?" And then him laughing more. And they went back and forth and did that for like 2 full minutes. And I was just crying.
That's
Maybe
amazing.
both
Yeah.
maybe both of you can address this
You know-
question because I'd be curious to hear Kelly's response as a parent, and then obviously Cher's response as a teacher. Do you believe we're doing enough in schools to teach kids compassion?
I'll go quick first. I hope other schools are doing what Share and Compass are doing. I don't know if they are, but I know that this group of kids, the amount of kids that have come up that want to play with Dempsey, interact with Dempsey, are truly the kindest kids I've ever talked to. And the amount that say, like, "Oh, Dempsey's inspired me to be a Compass teacher," or "I want to work with kids like Dempsey." I don't know if other schools are getting those interactions and getting, it sounds like a lab experiment if I say hands on with Dempsey or his friends, but it's not an experiment, it's real life and they're friends, so we can take that out. But they have true interaction. This isn't staged. It's real life and it's happening.
That's awesome.
And I would say, I hope other schools are teaching about compassion. I wouldn't say we're not doing enough because I know that teachers are constantly bombarded with more and more and more. Compassion is definitely should be, learning to interact with others. That definitely should be at the top of what we're teaching children. But I definitely know I don't want somebody coming up to me and go, "You're not doing enough," because I beat myself up enough with, I have so many things on my agenda that I want to do. And if I do a fraction of them, it is actually great. But I'm always like, it could be more. I could be doing more. And so I know that teachers are um, constantly having more and more added to their plate, but compassion is extremely important. And teaching the children that when they go, because of the visual impairments, it's very important for them to go up to our students and to say who they are. And especially if Dempsey is going to be sitting by you. So when we go into a classroom, who's ever by Dempsey or by some of the other children, they need to say who they are. And we say pair it with a touch. So my touch is I touch their arm. So I touch their left arm and I squeeze it 3 times and I say, I first use my voice so I don't startle them. But I say, "Hi, Dempsey, it's Cher." And I give him the 3 squeezes. And I do the same 3 squeezes for all of my students on the upper left arm. But that's my touch. You would have your own touch. You would figure out what your touch is going to be to pair with your name. And that's what you would use every single time for every single kid because it's only fair for them to know who's by them. And like Kelly said, the kids just naturally start to do this. The kids know that Dempsey can't handle the fluorescent lights. And so when we invade a classroom, kids just go over and lower some of the lights. They just do it. They move desks so we can just get through. It's just natural. They're just thinking about it. And what's super cool is that they want to know, when can we come back? When is Compass coming back? And um, if there's just not enough of us, that's the biggest problem. There's not enough of us to spread everywhere.
So, Cher, the explanation you just gave is just, it blows me away that this is not taught in every school. But it does require specialized teachers and specialized situations in order to create a program where you can integrate the two kids together in a safe way, right? A safe place emotionally, a safe place physically. But maybe there are times when inclusion is not always the right answer. So what's the purpose when it is used and when may it not be the right answer?
I think you have the answer within your question. What is the purpose? What are you doing? And if you are learning long division, not the time. My students are going to be bored. They're not going to know why they're there, and definitely don't want someone to be a distraction to someone else's learning. But to blanket statement say, well, it's math. We never include during math. Well, then that's not okay. Because math, probability, uh, average, mean, median, mode, all of these different concepts, you could actively come up with a scenario that you could have the students from Compass be part of. And if you're having, like, I want to include the kids from Compass, but I don't know how, talk to your students. Have them brainstorm. How could we learn about probability and have Dempsey come in using his switch? Could we give him choices? Could we, like, how could we predict, use this probability and measure based on what Dempsey responds with? And the kids could help you problem solve it. It's that whole think smarter, not harder, right? Our Spanish teacher, Profe Nicole Middlestadt, who you saw in the video, originally with the compassion invasion, just getting exposure was what we were working on. And then I realized our kids, the rest of the students at Glen Lake, need to see Compass students actively involved. And I have other teachers who I wish I could list them all, but they are so phenomenal in not just supporting me in this endeavor, but joining and coming up with their own ideas. And so Profe was like, how could we have Compass answer these questions on what some of their favorite things are? And the kids in Spanish, instead of just having Compass be their audience, started to interview my students. And again, they would use just a simple yes to answer which was their favorite, but we taught them how presenting things to Dempsey is different than presenting to another child. I'm trying not to say too many names, but another child, you could hold up two different things and they could look, they could use eye gaze to answer. Whereas with Dempsey, because of his visual impairment, he listens so well. And you could just tell him what the option is. Tell him you're going to give him three choices, tell him the option and wait. Then present the next one and wait. And during that wait time, that's when he might hit his switch if that's his choice. And it says that one, that one. And if you got to the end of all three and he didn't give you an answer, he's maybe thinking, and then you go through them again, and then he'll give you an answer on what his choice is. Profe also set it up that the kids helped rotate the groups. And so when one of the kids hit a switch from Compass, time to rotate, that's when they would rotate. And she wanted it random, and it was, So the kids never knew how much time they had at a given location in the room with all the different centers that she had set up. Karin Brinkoff, I think Kelly can sing her praises just as loud as I can. Karin Brinkoff is a third, fourth grade teacher at our school, and she and I have joined forces and just really done a deep dive on this inclusion. We have begun to create a compassion curriculum. And we've used different books to read to the students and have these discussions on disabilities and have it relate to our students in Compass. Then, in the midst of us trying to figure out what's our next book, Kelly said, "Hey, did you hear about the movie Out of My Mind coming out on Disney Plus?" And I was like, that is a young adult book. Right? It's like basically for 5th through 8th graders, right? And so I have read that chapter book to students before. So Karin and I looked at it and talked about it, and we said, let's do it. And I have a theater background. I'm sometimes in a show. So it gave me the opportunity to read the chapters and to kind of give different voices to the different characters. And then we would have unbelievable conversations. Um, it it's a little hard for me to flat out recommend out of my mind. There's a few things in that book that I would give a little pause to. I felt like there's a lot of gender roles. The the children in the book are at a TV studio, and it was the men who were dealing with the heavy cameras, and it's multiple examples of real stereotypical kind of gender assigned roles. There was some what I would call fat shaming, just teasing somebody about weight or describing somebody based on their weight, and I thought, hey, come on, and and I know that you can you can unpack those things too. If you're reading out loud and they're not following along, you can skip some of those things. You have that luxury. Um, one of the things that is very triggering, I would say, definitely that people need to be aware of is the R word is used in the book. And I get it, not every character is going to be PC and, inclusive, but a doctor said it. And then there was no unpacking of the R word. And it was the actual R word. It didn't say R word, it said the word. And Car and I looked at that, and instead of shying away from it, we decided to use it to our advantage. And we set it up that I was reading and I got to the word, and before definitely didn't say it, but I got to it and I was like, oh, and I just stopped reading. And the kids, this got their attention. I said, oh, this is breakup. This is terrible. I can't believe what this is. I can't say this. What is it? And I went over to her and I showed her. And of course, this is all pre-set up, but we just had the kids in the palm of our hand. And she's like, oh no, that is a very hurtful, harmful word. Oh my goodness, I can't believe the doctor said that in the, oh, are you kidding me? And the what? And the kids, we talked to them about the word. Obviously, we did say it so that they would know exactly what we're talking about, but we talked about why it's so painful, why it's so hurtful. And the thing is, we were able to do it before somebody heard it from an older sibling or on social media, and then just repeated it willy nilly out on the playground to get a reaction and not really understand it. We did it preemptively. We did it before someone said it. And then that way they know about it. And when you know things, you have to behave accordingly. But we also talked about what do you do if you hear somebody say it? What do you do if you hear an older cousin or somebody use the word? And when you're 9, 10, and you're physically the smaller, younger child, how can you approach somebody with in a brave manner, but yet in a practical manner? And so we talked about that they could say that they learned that that is a harmful word and that they have friends with disabilities, so they don't use that word. And that seemed to really resonate with the children, that that was something they could do instead of you can't use that word. And we even kind of acted out like, if you did that, would somebody want to listen to you scolding them? And some kids said, no, they just say it all the more. And I said, yep, you're absolutely right. But if you talk to them about how it hurt you and how you had learned it was a harmful word, they'd be way more open to listening. And if we want people to treat people like humans, we need to treat them like a human because they might not really understand what they're saying either. So we use the book as a springboard. In the book, Melody, the main character, also talks about another student in her class who has. I should explain that Melody in the book is a child that has CP. She's nonverbal, uses a wheelchair, but I would not consider her compass at all. She is higher functioning. She uses a communication device. And she's, talking about a child who poops his pants. And so we paused and we talked about why somebody might need to wear diapers. And when kids understand that your bladder has to hold, you need muscles to be able to hold your bladder, that you get a signal in your brain, all the things that need to be working for you to be toilet trained and to choose to relieve yourself into a toilet. It's it's amazing that they're like, oh, they just don't even think about it. But when they know that pooping your pants isn't that funny, they get it, and it humanizes the situation. In the book, there was a chapter, and this relates to Dempsey. In the book, there's the chapter when Melody gets her communication device. And she's had all these words in her mind, and she hasn't been able to say any of them. And this is finally her opportunity to get out of her mind. And she's able to tell her parents that she loves them. And that, I think, all parents who have a child that has a condition where they're not able to use words to speak, to hear "I love you," it's profound. And we read the chapter, and at the end of the chapter, we were going to show a video and move on. And the next thing we know, Dempsey starts to silently, but just cry, just burst into tears. And the class just went completely quiet. Dempsey is not a crier. Like, that's one thing you have to understand, that this was very different for him. And they knew to read his body language, to pay attention, that this meant something, and to think about it and to realize Melody in the book got a communication device and was finally able to get the words out of her mind. Why wouldn't Dempsey want that too? And how that affected Dempsey. And that kids talk about different ways to be smart. They know how smart Dempsey is. And they knew in that moment it was crystal clear that Dempsey completely understood what was going on. It just brought me to tears.
Kelly, you said you have other kids too. How old are they?
I have a soon-to-be 8-year-old and a 2-year-old.
You are in the thick of it.
Always, always. But no, Dom is like a third parent, so it's actually not that bad.
Is that your 8-year-old?
Yeah. That would be like one of the things about, I think, just being in our family that people, I mean, I get commented on how good Dom is. Like, he's just the chillest, will listen to anyone. But he grew up with Dempsey. He never knew you had to fight for toys. You never, like, he didn't get all the attention when he probably maybe needed it because Dempsey needed attention because he threw up a lot or whatever. You know, he's just the best kid. And it is, I wish people could see, like, growing up in our household looks so much different than other households, that we have this very, very, I don't know what praise to give him. Most like self-sufficient and calm kid. And he's just the best.
Kind of like what we see in the classroom where, the classmates develop that compassion, but when you live with it and it's your sibling, it's like that on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was gonna say something, but I didn't know how to put into words. And then when I talk about Dom, I really cry because it is, you see it now, my youngest, Tyson, who's 2, you see Tyson and Dom interacting, and I will still, on a daily, be like, oh, I wish Dempsey got that. Anyway.
I'm glad you guys just had that conversation, because I think that is just so, it just really humanizes the situation and makes it relatable for people.
And that's what we've been working on, is humanizing the students in Compass to the rest of the school. And Kelly and Dom, the soon-to-be 8-year-old, have come to Dempsey's 3rd, 4th grade class and talked about him. And it's amazing because originally their questions were really medical based and disability related. And then they just started turning into, like, what do you do for fun? And for Kelly to just talk about what Dempsey likes to do, car washes and all sorts of fun stuff. And for Dom just to be like, yeah, that's my brother. That's, like,
That's
He
awesome.
knows nothing different, but he'll hold every single door open. He'll grab whatever you need grabbed.
That's awesome.
Just the best.
it really, really humanizes the situation to not only hear about the family, but see the family. And Kelly's so great about supplying photos and videos to go along with Dempsey. Share about your weekend. Everybody gets a chance to share about their weekend. And the kids are like, man, Dempsey's family is cool.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Um, let's move on and talk about this amazing accessible playground that you have at Glen Lake. And I just want to bring up the fact that a local children's author and illustrator named Nancy Carlson actually wrote and illustrated a book about it. And Cher just mentioned she's in theater. She is my show wife for the next few months because she's playing opposite my husband, who's also an actor in a show. So maybe are we kind of related? Does that mean we're kind of related?
Oh, absolutely. That's our story, and we're sticking to it.
That's awesome. But Cher, when they had callbacks for the show that they just got cast in, Cher gave Tom this autographed copy of the book to give to me. And I will cherish this. I wish that I had had this when my kids were young, but if and when I have grandchildren, I will make sure to read it to them. But Nancy is just such an amazing author that just brings humanity into illustrations that are animals with human traits. And I love her illustrations and I love this book. So why don't we have you guys dive into this amazing playground that we saw in the video and why it blew up? Like it was all over the news when this launched.
Absolutely.
So
It started where Betsy Julian was a fifth, sixth grade teacher in 2022, and her son is a student in my class. And so she and I, as well as Rob Mullen, the preschool teacher who had students who use wheelchairs as well, the three of us got together and we wrote a grant. We were hoping, let's just get a merry-go-round or a swing or something. Let's see what we can get. And we wrote the grant and we got most of it funded, but not all. So Betsy went to her students and said, hey, how about, would anyone be interested in helping raise money so we can get maybe 2 pieces of equipment? And as fifth and sixth graders think, they were like, why can't we just do the whole playground? Well, because that's almost $1 million. And they were like, let's go for it. So they did. And we had news coverage and people are like, how did it go national? Well, if you have a lemonade stand out, it's not going to go national. It goes national once you actually raise enough money to have your huge goal be met. So it was the local news reports first that got it going. And we got to the point where we said, okay, let's have Kelly and her son Dempsey and Betsy and her son Luke. Let's have them talk about it from the parent perspective, because we definitely, that the children who are doing the fundraising, of course they deserve all the attention. Of course they deserve to be in the news coverage. I would never want to take away 1 second of that. But to tell the story fully, you need to include the children who will be the most benefited through accessible equipment. And so Kelly and Betsy both spoke about what this would mean for their own children. And an anonymous donor who, all we know, is a woman who lives in Minnesota with a disability, saw that and clearly had access to some coinage.
wow,
It topped it off. It was amazing.
that's awesome.
Kelly, do you want to add anything to that?
Just going back to like Dempsey can have fun, he can play, and this is a great way for kids to be at the same level with him and being engaged with him with no pressure of what do I say. You're just playing. Every kid knows how to play and he can do that too. I will add just one more thing quick. You're gearing up there. Also, just with equipment wise, and just a rule of thumb for life moving forward for anyone who wants to think this way. But it's, if my kid can do it, every other kid can. Because my kid has profound disabilities. If he can do it, most every other kid can, and kids who are like him can. And it goes with that one meme that I love to say where it's a school and the janitor is shoveling off the stairs as the kids are walking up the stairs that he shoveled, and the wheelchair kid, or the kid who uses a wheelchair, that was my bad, is waiting for the ramp to be shoveled. And the guy shoveling says, well, I gotta get the stairs shoveled first for all these kids. And it's like, well, why not shovel the ramp? Because everybody can use that. Let's start seeing life in what everybody can do. Then we don't have to make adaptions anymore or make it inclusive, because everything should bare minimum be inclusive.
That just gave me goosebumps.
Well, I wish I would have said it more adequately. I'm sorry.
Honest to
about that.
God, goosebumps, because I think we just get caught in this tunnel vision.
Right.
Like, not to
It's a cartoon.
this
Yeah.
predator at this, I'm assuming it's fictional,
Yeah.
but
Yes,
not-
it was a cartoon.
yeah.
What it has in real life. That's
But it does happen. It does happen in real life. And the fact that everybody can walk up the ramp, but not everybody can walk up those stairs. And instead of focusing on equity and accessibility for everybody, having the tunnel vision that the stairs for the quote unquote normal kids can use is a trap, I think, that a lot of us get caught in, even if we are compassionate and even if we are empathetic.
And we all know that there's graduations, high school graduations, where they just didn't think about the child who uses a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And so, how are they going to cross the stage? I know. We'll just go down to the floor level and give them their diploma literally lower
Right.
than everyone else. And what does that say?
Yeah.
What symbolically? It's like, just think about it. We'll lower the presentation of the diploma for that child. And
Well, and that just speaks to the fact that we should not expect these children to rise up to the moment. We need to rise up for them, and we owe it to them to do that.
And to me, there's this parable, the little lost lamb, that the shepherd has 100 lambs, but the littlest one gets lost. And instead of moving on with the flock of 99, he says, wait a second, where is this little dude? I got to find him, because everybody counts and everybody's important. But what does that teach the other 99? That if you also have a disability, maybe a hidden disability, we got you. And we have seen that repeatedly in our students at Glen Lake, that sometimes I'll talk about the Kids in Compass and someone will say, actually, I have anxiety and it's really difficult for me to talk in front of everyone. Well, first of all, you just did. And second of all, your peers didn't know that. And now they're there to support you. So if you're like, hey, I'm having an anxious moment, just give me a second, there's compassion. And we have seen it time and time again how empowered the rest of the kids are, when our original intention was to empower the children with the disabilities. So it just keeps going. Along with the playground, there has been some really, it's been a very hard journey. As we said, there can be news reporters can pull out what they want. They can also cut out the kids with multiple disabilities and just show the higher functioning kids, the cuter kids, shall we say. And when I have a classroom full of children who use wheelchairs, and there's just a couple other kids in the building who also use wheelchairs, but those couple other kids who deserve to be on TV as well, but they keep getting shown again and again and again, and Compass gets cut out, it really started to hurt. So that really lit a fire on, we cannot let this happen to our future generation. They need to know that this historical population of kids in Compass were traditionally just hidden away and not I mean, they were institutionalized, as I saw when I was a kindergartner and I went to an institution and I saw them there and I thought, this is horrific. This is horrific. These kids do not have the same life as everybody else. Why? And because of some of the hurt and the pain that seeing our kids just not included in some of these posts on social media or edited out of news coverage, um, shame on me if I don't work to flip that narrative.
Sharing that, I think, is really important for people to hear that.
Our playground we love it. There's a few things about it that weren't built for our population. And that's really hard to deal with because, again, like Kelly said, if Dempsey can't do it, it's very limiting for the rest of our kids in Compass. But our playground, that's why we decided, yes, let's get a children's author to help tell our story. And Nancy Carlson is just phenomenal. She came, she took photos, we talked, we threw everything at her, including the walkers and the hearing aids and everything, the kitchen sink, forget about that. We threw everything else at her. And she came up with multiple drafts of the story. Originally, that it was not like this book at all. Because what do you focus on? Like the fundraising or what? And we just basically realized the secret in the sauce is the playground doesn't magically make kids friends. The playground alone isn't going to create inclusion. It's going to give you opportunities. It's a tool. But we have to provide opportunities for kids to be friends first. They're friends first, and then the playground story can come together. And that's exactly what happens in The Swing for Samara. And I could go through here on how she literally took pictures that like even included Dempsey and like drew them into these cute little animals and all of that. So she really, really listened, and we collaborated on this book, and we're super proud of it.
It's awesome. Well, we are getting close to the end here. I think Monica, did we miss anything?
Let's do our little lightning round at the end and let them each take their thing.
All right, you start off the lightning round, Monica.
All right, Cher, what was your biggest aha moment as an educator?
It sounds so simple now, but when someone has a child with a disability, they have hopes and dreams that were crushed most of the time. I mean, unless they adopted a child they knew was going to have significant disabilities. But even before a child's born, people have hopes and dreams for them. And whether that child's born with the disability or it's acquired later, hopes and dreams are lost. And as a teacher, my big aha moment was realizing, although it can be hard to watch children suffer, and I have had more children die in my life than should be allowed ever, I have the luxury of meeting the parents where they're at and helping them grow new hopes and dreams and helping them focus on what their child can do and getting their child to be as independent as possible. And now through this compassion invasion and the help of my coworkers, being able for their child to be a friend and have friends and be a leader at the school.
Amazing. Kelly, what's something about Dempsey that always makes you smile?
I mean, to say he like lights up a room is no joke. He is just so funny, and he does this squawking. Like, he's so excited. If he's in his chair, he's kicking. If he's on the ground, it's like he can scoot himself from kicking so hard, and he is just vocalizing, like yelling so happy. It's like a singing, squawking, but you will just start laughing hearing it. And he's just so thrilled. And sometimes you don't know about what, but it just makes you happy to see him happy.
Sher, if you could change one thing about how schools handle disability, what would it be?
There just always needs to be ongoing communication. Administrators, I feel like where I'm at Glen Lake in the Hopkins district, it's a cakewalk, maybe the opposite of a cakewalk. We don't take the chairs away, we keep adding chairs. We keep inviting more people in and really working to be inclusive in all areas, not just with disability. And administrators who really get your program. They've been in your room, they've met your kids, and they listen. They listen to parents, they listen to teachers. That's when change happens. And that's what I encourage every school just to be really on top of. Have your thumb on the pulse of the building and know your people and listen because like I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I try not to complain, but when I do, I really want you to hear what I have to say because it's a pretty big deal.
Kelly, what do you want people to stop assuming about kids like your son?
Well, just a quick one. Personally, what Dempsey is, people are like, "Oh, he's sleepy," and I'm like, he's never sleeping. He just, if he's in a stroller, he's reclined a little bit because he can't hold up his trunk or has no trunk support and no head control. So, if anyone hears this, if you see a child who does not look like an infant who might be sleeping, don't say that kid is sleeping because it really just kills me to be like, actually, then I go into my whole rant depending on how I'm feeling that day, but I'll be like, actually, he has cerebral palsy. He's not able to sit up or look around like you might think he can, but he's just hanging out. Like sometimes just comments are just, it's hard for a parent to hear over and over just because he looks different. And I know nobody means no harm by saying, oh, he's sleeping. Like, yeah, he probably does look like that, but he's not, and it hurts me. That one's just for me mostly. What's one thing? Stop assuming. I I don't think anybody ever has bad assumptions about Dempsey or us. I don't think. I just hope that this community reaches more and more people who will build this compassion and this understanding. And it is the coming up and being like, oh, hi, Dempsey, I'm so and so, and then I can talk for him. You can ask him questions. It's just the interactions and treating him like a human being.
Sounds like you welcome questions, which is good for people to hear too.
Yes.
And for both of you, what gives you hope looking forward?
It's the whole thing I've been saying this whole time, but it's these kids. It's these kids that he interacts with and who love him. And it's just, I hope that, the world becomes a kinder place. Like we don't all have to have all this hate. And, we are all humans. We could be kinder and it doesn't have to be political. It can just be kindness. And it'd be a much happier place if we just cared about people, if we wanted people to have what they need to have in order to live their best life.
Yeah,
Not always about fairness. It's always about just what people need. People should be able to have and get without, I don't know what, a GoFundMe or something insane. Like, let's just
be
have the free meals. Like, let's just take care of people.
No.
Yes.
Why is that so radical?
That should not be.
That you would want what's best for somebody else. Like I don't
Right.
understand it either. The kids definitely give me hope. I should also give a little shout out to Play for All. They are the fundraising children that originally got us our accessible playground at Glen Lake, and they've now turned this into a nonprofit. They continue to raise money to build accessible playgrounds throughout Minnesota. So they're still doing fundraising and they're continuing to make this their mission in life, it feels like. But what else gives me hope? this is such a small thing, but it was so beautiful. It was one of the last teacher work days. I'm packing up my room, and a teacher, a first and second grade teacher, I wish I could say her name, but class lists change sometimes, so I better not. But she came into my room and she said, Cher, I just found out I'm getting 2 of your kids in Compass next year. I can't wait. Tell me about them. And I've been in her classroom before, and we've talked through with her students. We've done the spiel. We've read books together with my class and her class there at the same time. Her level of enthusiasm, and she really, like, she wanted to know how, oh, this is going to be so great, because she knows we will be collaborating. We will be making it lessons out of this opportunity that we have this population at this school. And it just gave me life. I texted Jeff Radel, the principal, love him dearly. He supports this 100%. And I was like, Jeff, just a little warm fuzzy, this just happened. And I need the summer to recharge, but I am already so excited for next year. And that right there is just one of the many reasons why. And I get to see Dempsey again. I'm going to come swimming with him this summer. So get ready.
Yeah.
Monica wrote
Goodness ripples.
Monica, was it Hope Ripples or Love Ripples? I can't remember. Goodness Ripples. And what you just talked about is what Monica really spoke to in that article that she wrote. I think, Monica, you could probably speak more to that than I can, because that article came from your heart. But as I said, this whole interview has been a major dopamine hit for me. I just feel so warm inside, and being able to go on this emotional ride with the both of you. It's been up, it's been down. There have been some tears. There's been laughter, and there's been happiness. And I think that is we are so blessed to be able to give a platform to people like you and the both of you. So I hope that you had the same experience here with us today that we had with you.
That's a personal goal that I have as an educator, is for more and more people to understand this population and know that inclusion makes such a difference, that children learn to empower each other through this experience. And Kelly has so many play dates lined up for Dempsey right now. It's not even funny. And children saying, I'm going to be a special ed teacher someday. So it lights a fire.
Kelly and Cher, thank you, both of you, for being here with us today, for being genuine, for being yourselves, for feeling all the feelings, the joy and the hope, and your work in making the world more inclusive. And thanks for being with us on the show today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. The world would be a much better place if there were more Kellys, Dempseys, and Shers in it, for sure. And if you're listening right now and you're moved by what you've heard, don't let it stop at a feeling. Do something. Ask your school board about inclusion, volunteer, support organizations in your community that provide adaptive equipment for kids who need it. Read books that normalize disability to your children. And most importantly, teach your kids that all children have value, even if they don't learn or play or speak in the same ways that we all might expect.
You can find links to Cher's classroom video, Nancy Carlson's book, and resources for inclusive education in our show notes. And if you're finding meaning in the stories we're sharing, if something moves you, challenges you, or makes you see the world a little differently, please comment, and share. It helps more than you know. It puts our work in front of more sets of eyeballs and goes miles in helping us grow this amazing community.
And don't forget to find us on all of our socials. We're on Substack, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under @ThePoliticsChicks.
And keep shining your light so we can find each other in the dark.
And remember, we're always stronger together. Thanks so much for listening today, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, folks.